The Philippine presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is on the verge of a landslide electoral win. Preliminary and unofficial results have him picking up 58% of the vote, and that is nearly 30 points higher than his closest rival. But take a listen to some of the reaction from Filipino Canadians.
It's a huge blow for democracy in the world. What's happening in the Philippines will affect the region, I think, and might affect the world too.
They spent a lot of money in changing the story that the Marcos years were the golden years, when in fact it's the other way around. So people are believing that.
Marcos Jr. is the son of former dictator Ferdinand Marcos, who ruled the Philippines from 1965 to 1986 before being ousted by a mass protest movement. So far, though, Marcos Jr. has won more than 30 million votes, while his rival, Leni Robredo, has won around 14 million. The official count will be confirmed within the next few weeks. David Grunebaum is tracking the story for us. He joins us now from the temporary election headquarters in Manila. David, thank you for joining us again. Talk to us first and foremost, the kind of your reaction that you are seeing and hearing at this moment to the numbers so far.
Yeah, well, hundreds of students here protested today. They protested in front of the Commission on Elections offices. They're upset about election irregularities, and there certainly were some. We had hundreds of voting machines and hundreds of vote counting machines break down, not enough backups to go around, really long lines when people were voting yesterday. Some people stood in line for well over 4 hours. I spoke to a couple this morning who said they stood in line for almost 2 hours and still had no idea how much longer they would be waiting. So they ended up just going home because I said they had too much to do to wait any longer. There are reports in local media of some ballot snatching in some of the outer provinces. Now, to be fair, there's no indication that these issues would have led, if they hadn't happened, that we would have a different result, though. But it just adds fuel to the fire of people who are just extremely furious about a Marcos Jr. presidency. Now, I spoke to some people on the streets here today. Two people really stood out to me. One is a 55-year-old taxi driver named Dante. He voted for Marcos Jr., is very excited about it. He said to me, look, for years and years, we tried these supposedly more democratic presidents here. We're going to strengthen our institutions and bring more democracy. But our day-to-day lives didn't get any better. We still have so much poverty here. We have huge gaps between the richest and the poorest. We have under-resourced healthcare, under-resourced education. He says, we're hoping that can change. He is a big fan of the current president, Rodrigo Duterte, who, of course, has that very controversial war on drugs, which has led to scores of extrajudicial killings. But Dante said, look, it has made our streets safer. He's hoping to see more of that strongman rule from Ferdinand Marcos Jr. He's hoping to see that. Now, on the other side was a 28-year-old woman I spoke to, a school teacher named Anna. She said she was in tears when she told me, look, this just shows you that if you're rich enough and powerful enough, you can get away with anything. She talked about the billions of dollars the Marcos family is accused of stealing when Marcos Sr. was in power, of stealing from the government, and that the family still owes billions in dollars of estate taxes that they have long owed and has not been paid. She said, we're going to be paying our taxes. What about them?
You mentioned a bit of the Marcos Jr. presidency, and Marcos Jr., as you know, also known in the Philippines as Bongbong Marcos. What might that presidency look like?
Yeah, we really don't know, because during the campaign, he was so vague. There was just no detail. He talked in broad strokes about, increasing jobs, trying to keep prices down, about uniting the country. But analysts seem to think that he's going to be pushing for big-ticket infrastructure projects. He's going to look for close ties to China. But there are concerns, these same analysts will tell you, there are concerns that corruption, which is a serious issue here, that could get worse under a Marcos Jr. presidency.
David, thank you for that. Appreciate the analysis. That is David Grunebaum in Manila.